Okay. Hello, is I, Wacky Anime What If. I'm here to present you in my own premiere that I'm doing, which I might not even be able to attend. This is pre-recorded, if anyone didn't know. But anyway, it's What If Deku was in ReZero. I decided to do this because I'm a fan of ReZero and I like My Hero Academia, so might as well. Okay, so this all started off when in training, when Shinzo and all of them were training, and his black whip went out of control. Midoriya's black whip went out of control, and Shinzo was about to ask Midoriya a question, to shut down the actual black whip, but that did not work at all, because right when he's about to answer, he blinks twice, and everyone else sees these shadow hands come out, literally grabbing him, and All Might is seeing this and tries to rush towards Midoriya and grab him, ignoring the black whips, which, literally, they're viewing this happen, okay? The hands just grab him and disappear, which they're all screaming and worried because that was probably a villain attack in their eyes. They don't know about Satella and all them, and everything in ReZero, so they're thinking it was a villain's quirk, which is pretty accurate for them. So they're literally putting out, missing posters, all of this stuff, which is just, All Might mostly. All Might and Izuku's mom are mainly the ones doing this. And let's go to the point of Izuku. When they were in the training exercise and he blinked the third time, he just appeared in a different world. What seemed to him as a different world, because when he looked around, he didn't see any technology or anything. I mean, the furries and stuff, and the beastmen, didn't really seem that odd to him, because there were mutation quirks in his world. That wasn't that odd. And unlike Subaru, he doesn't shout he's the main character, because, well, he honestly didn't have that overconfident pride, similar to Subaru. But Midoriya looked around and saw absolutely everything. Saw that there was tons of people roaming the streets, there was carriages, and there were some draconic-looking creatures that were dragging the carriages, which he thought was pretty cool, actually. But he wanted to get back to where he was before. And he's wondering if this is, if it's possible for him to get back to his world. So he starts asking around for information. Everyone's looking at him like he's crazy when he mentions that he's from another world. They also see his outfit, and he's wearing his hero outfit, by the way, which is very odd clothing to them. Which most people just ignore him because he's in really shady looking clothes. And Midoriya noticed this, but, doesn't really do anything because he doesn't have any money and he can't really change his clothes. Because he didn't have a change of clothes with him when he was abruptly teleported to a new world. So he just asks around, no one answers him. He has to go use the restroom, so he just walks down the street, sees two stalls, and looks at it and is like, I know one of them's for males, one of them's for females. This one is colored red, so I'm guessing it's females. This one's colored blue, so I'm guessing that's males. Opens the blue one, and it is the exact opposite, apparently. Because they were doing maintenance, and they actually swapped the signs. So Midoriya opens it, and it's the female restroom with the female furries inside. And he's like, fuck. And before they can slap him, he just uses full cowling, runs the fuck away. It's like, not today. Just runs away. Is literally on the main street by now. Runs all the way down the main street, sees the apple guy, but sees an alleyway next to the apple guy, and the girls are trying to catch up a little, so he just runs to the alleyway and just contemplates his thoughts while he's in the alleyway. Sits down, takes off his, jacket, part of his hero costume, and literally is contemplating on what to do. He's in a different place that he does not know. People here seem to have this thing which he's done a lot of research. This thing called divine protections. And there's a story about witches and stuff. One that was named Satella. Which he's thinking about all this. And these three thugs just walk into the alleyway. Blueberry, which is, let's say Bubblegum. Because he has blue hair and, a pink stripe. So let's say Bubblegum just walks up towards Izuku, points out his swords, and says, "Give us everything that you own and we might let you live, kid." Which Izuku just looks at them and says, Why would you guys try to do this? Exactly. What is the purpose of doing this? And they just laugh at him. And Midori is just wondering why people will go through such villainy, even in a different world, where everyone equally has powers, is what he thinks. So he just asks this, and they don't really care, they just want his money and stuff. So when the Bubblegum didn't really hear him concede or, say that he'd give him everything that he owns, he starts charging it at Midoriya. Midoriya says, "I'll just go ahead and beat you, villains." Literally just uses 5% of full Cali. In their eyes, he's fucking gone. And Midoriya already knocked out the blue Bubblegum guy. Just literally appeared right behind him, chopped him on the neck. The big guy tries to punch him. All he does is grab the big guy's fist, twists it, which does end up breaking his bone. And then Midoriya just kicks him right in the gut. The big guy's vomiting a little bit of blood. And then Izuku just grabs his head, slams it against the wall, and then kicks his back in, making him go unconscious. And looks to the side towards the short guy. The short guy said, "I don't want any of this, man." And then Midoriya's like, "Then turn yourself in." Which Midoriya literally calls out for the knights while grabbing the short guy so he can't run. And Reinhardt appears. And Reinhardt asks what's going on. Midoriya says, "These three tried to rob me, and I subdued them. Could you please take them to the equivalents that you call as jail or, holding, whatever you call it here?" And Reinhardt's pretty impressed because this kid, who looks like he's around 15, 16 or so, just knocked out 3 people. Which they're bandits and they're not really that strong, but Reinhardt's impressed that such a young kid knocked out all 3 of them. And it looked like it was one-sided. So Reinhardt just, says, "Okay, I'll take them, but you're going to have to do a statement." And Midoriya just says, "Oh, okay." And Reinhardt says, "Just, could you pick them up? A few, just one of them are up and carrying them with me?" So Reinhardt picks up the big guy and the Bubblegum guy, while Midoriya just picks up the short guy. So they're walking and talking, and Reinhardt asks how he knocked all 3 of them out and did so much damage to them. And then Midoriya said, "I have something called a quirk," which Reinhardt's confused and says, "You mean divine protection?" And Midoriya's like, "Oh yeah, that's what you people have, right? I don't have that. I have something called a quirk. It's the majority of the population from where I'm from have. About 90% of it 80% of it has a quirk or unique ability." Which Reinhardt's kind of intrigued because he's never heard of quirks, he just heard of divine protections. So he asks more questions, Izuku just, answers most of them. And then Reinhardt asks, "Where are you from?" And Izuku just says, "Well, if I told you that I wasn't from this world and I was teleported here, would that make me sound crazy?" And Reinhardt just laughs a little and says, "Of course that would sound crazy." And then Midoriya just says, then I'm from very far away." And Reinhardt literally just stops laughing and says, "Wait, were you serious about before?" And Midoriya just nods his head. Reinhardt doesn't believe him, but Reinhardt knows of a person who can detect if it's a lie or not, so Reinhardt says, "Alright, then could you follow me to a person that I know? She has a divine protection that she can tell if someone's lying or not. So we can tell if you're actually from another world. Because I've noticed that you have an abundance of power from a young age, and we're kind of worried that you might be a spy from another kingdom." Which Midoriya says, "That's fair enough, I guess." They bring in the three stooges that they had with them. They're put behind bars, and Reinhardt and Izuku are just having chats and stuff, just talking together. And Reinhardt just drags Izuku towards where Krush is, which they're just talking. Reinhardt gets him into a carriage, and they go to where Krush is. I'm just going to tell you this. Midoriya was summoned earlier than Subaru would have been. Okay? Subaru is not in this story whatsoever. Midoriya took the place of Subaru, but was summoned a month or so before the Amelia incident. Okay? Just to mix things up. So, yeah, Izuku is with Reinhardt. They're both in the carriage, which is heading towards Krush's residence. And Reinhardt asks more about Midoriya's world, and Midoriya ends up telling Reinhardt, "We have these transportations called cars. They don't use magic or, whatever these things are." And once he says that, the ground dragon looks at him funny, with a little snarl, and Midoriya says, "What are those anyway?" And Reinhardt just says, "Oh, those are ground dragons." And Midoriya is fascinated, and he still has his notebook on him though, so he starts writing it down. And Reinhardt's wondering, what's that book for? And then Midoriya says, "Oh, do you wanna look in the book? It's I always wrote down about heroes from my world, because I always wanted to become one. I was actually training to become a hero." Which Reinhardt's really, actually excited, because from what he can hear from Midoriya, there's heroes in his world, and there's abundance of them. And he thinks this is amazing. So he asks to see the book, and he looks through the book and sees a lot of various heroes. And he's very interested, actually. So him and Midoriya just chat on and on. Reinhardt's starting to believe more of what Midoriya says now. Midoriya also says that, it's not just all good, though. There are a lot of villains who have powerful quirks. There's one that was called Overhaul, or Chikazaki. He kidnapped a girl, which Reinhardt, hearing this, was pretty frustrated. And then he explained what happened. How he saved this girl called Eri, how she had a quirk that could rewind time. And Reinhardt's dumbfounded, because powers like this don't exist in ReZero, from what he can tell. And they seem fascinating. So he asks if he could see Midoriya's quirk later on. Then Midoriya says, "Sure, I'd gladly show you." And then Reinhardt asks if they could spar. And yeah, Midoriya's already heard of Reinhardt's reputation as I prefer not to. You're the equivalent of All Might from my world. Which, yeah, he already explained to Reinhardt about All Might. Which they start laughing a little. And Midoriya was like chuckling just nervously a little. So they both arrive to Krush's mansion, which at the mansion gates they literally see Felix, which Midoriya is like, huh, it's an adorable cat girl. And then Reinhardt's like, that's not a girl. And then Midoriya's eyes just drop. They're like, oh no, no. Is this what they call a trap? Oh no. I'm so glad that Reinhardt told me this, is what he says in his mind. And Felix is just chuckling because this isn't the first time this happened. And yeah. They start, talking. Midoriya says that they're here to meet someone named Krush, which Felix is like, for what reason? Pretty defensive, actually. And Reinhardt says, well, we need to verify something from Midoriya here. Which, Felix is skeptical, but invites them in. Felix invites them in. They meet Krush, like once they go up the stairs. They see Krush, and Krush asks what the pleasure to see Reinhardt is. And Reinhardt says, I need you to verify if this young lad over here is telling the truth. And Krush sees Midoriya and thinks, the kid looks very innocent, so I doubt that he's really lying. Because she can literally sense the innocence in his eyes, like just sees it. Which she finds that pretty adorable. So Krush drags Midoriya into her room, and Reinhardt follows, and so does Felix. So once they enter the room, Reinhardt says, alright, so could you ask this question? What is Midoriya from another world? Which Krush is odded out by this, and Felix just laughs, saying, there's no such thing as other worlds. That's just some theory that old men and grandpas tried to pass around a while ago. And then Krush just asked the question, and then Midoriya just says yes. And Krush is shocked because the wind literally tells her that he's telling the truth. And he says, so what is the verdict? And she says, he's telling the truth. Midoriya, you're telling the truth here. Which they're all shocked, and they silent down, except for Reinhardt. Reinhardt wasn't shocked at all. He believed in Midoriya. Even though they met like only a short distance, they actually grew a little bond. So, Krush asks, what is his world like? Because she's more curious now. Midoriya explains everything about the world. There's heroes and all this stuff. And Krush is very shocked, and actually intrigued because everything was the truth. And Felix is getting more interested in this conversation too. So Felix asks, so what was one of the most biggest villains that were in your world? And literally, Midoriya says, there was this person known as All For One. He managed to take people's quirks, which they're shocked about because they're imagining someone in their world that could take divine protections. Like, imagine if someone like that existed in their world and they shuddered. That seems like a nightmare. And then he explains that All Might, incapacitated him and they locked him up, but he took a lot of people's quirks, thousands of them, perhaps millions. He's the strongest villain by far. He also had a successor known as Shigaraki. And All Might and I theorized that he may be getting All For One, the quirk, which we're very scared of. That's one of the reasons why I want to try to make it back to my own world. And Krush tells them that he's telling the exact truth. They're horrified that he's ever had any of these encounters with villains. And he was so young. And Midoriya just tells them that he doesn't exactly know where to stay, so could he stay with one of them? Which Krush just says, of course, but as compensation you have to tell me more about your world tomorrow. Which Midoriya just says, okay. And she literally notices Izuku's book, which she had out the entire time and was writing, and asks, like, what he was writing. And Midoriya said, well, whenever I see a hero or someone that I just think is very intriguing, I usually, like, do doodles of them and write down their quirk or ability, mainly so that I can, know about this in the future. It's just a habit of mine, which Krush, at first thinks that he might be a spy, but realizes he's probably not, and this is his hobby most likely. So just to check, asks, is Midoriya a spy? Which the room tenses up immediately. Reinhardt's offended that she would say this to him, and Felix was curious about this all along, but just didn't have the guts to say it. And Midoriya said, no, I am not, which, when she heard that it was the truth, the entire room just calmed down immediately. So she asked, could she see the book, though? And Midoriya just handed her the book. She looked through and saw all these heroes, their abilities, and what they looked like, and she was very shocked. And she was actually pretty excited because she thinks about all the fairy tales that she was told when she was a kid. Which she thought that his world was pretty interesting. She actually wants to go there eventually, if ever possible. Which she actually says this out loud. And Midoriya said, if I find a way to my world, I could probably find a way that you could visit if you want. Which she's even more hyped. There's sparkles in her eyes, but since she realizes that she already grabbed Izuku's hands and was profusely shaking his hands, showing her excitement out, which Reinhardt was chuckling, so was Felix. And then she literally calms back down and says, I'm sorry for, showing you something so unbecoming of a person that's supposed to be in the royal selection, which Midoriya has heard about the royal selection and says, I think you'd be a very good fit, though, as the next ruler, which they're all, she blushes. She's, really shocked. And is weirdly more emotional on the inside because no one's really people have given her support, but never seen someone that told the truth about it, except for Felix. And, yeah, she's blushing a little. Reinhardt notices this and chuckles even more. And Felix is, just a little jealous. Mainly because Midoriya is getting so much attention from Krush, which Midoriya says, is it okay if I go to my room? And Krush says, oh, it's perfectly fine. So Krush, escorts Midoriya to his room and asks if she could look through the notebook a little more and then hand it back later. Which Midoriya says, sure. So Krush walks off with his notebook, reading into it, and Midoriya isn't like the normal Midoriya. He also had notes of villains, because he might have to fight them later. He has a whole different section for that, which Krush runs into and sees that his world's a lot more dangerous than she would have thought. But there's always a balance towards it, which she finds out while scrolling through the notebook. And she, continues walking to her actual office, which she does some paperwork and goes to sleep. Midoriya, inside of his now bedroom, is contemplating on what to do, how to get back, and all of this stuff. And then he starts thinking about multiple ways to get back, but none of them really pan out, because he doesn't have any powers that would cross dimensions, or if you cross into another world, and he doesn't have something like Kurogiri to teleport anywhere. So it's not really possible, is what he's thinking. So he's thinking he has to find someone that can go through different, dimensions, or something similar to this. He's thinking all of this, and then he goes to sleep. Which is going to be the end of this What If. I will do more What Ifs on this later. This will be a whole series. And this might have been a little rushed, but I'll redo it later on if you know, people in the comments suggest so. Alright, so Wacky Anime What If going out, and see you guys soon, hopefully, in my next video.